Hello, listeners. This is Janine
and Kristen
from Henrico Casa. You are listening to our podcast, Vigilant Voices. Living life every day. Hello, listeners. Thank you for joining us for this new guest episode of our Vigilant Voices podcast.
In this season of gratitude, we're so thankful for you and the commitment to children's well-being that you share with us. Knowing there are so many fellow vigilant voices out there is both inspiring and motivating.
And today's guest is without a doubt a fellow vigilant voice. Such a strong voice that she was recently named as an Angel in Adoption honoree by the Congressional Coalition on Adoption Institute, which is timely because we invited her to join us because November is National Adoption Month.
Right. And I've known her for a few years now and know that this recognition is well-deserved, 100%. And it's a real reflection of both her personal and professional commitment to children. But I'm going to let her tell you all about that. So welcome, Autumn Zaborowski.
Thank you.
Yay.
Glad to be here.
We're glad to have you.
We really are.
Appreciate everything you guys do.
Thank you.
To raise up the
right
voices
back
and
at
advocate.
you.
Yes.
Thank you. This is going to be a great conversation. And this is my first time meeting you. And so I really can't wait, Autumn, to hear a little bit more about some of the progress you've made improving collaboration and advocacy on behalf of children in our community. But before we get to all that good stuff, we always like to just hear a little bit about our guests. So what's your story?
Oh, sure. Well, the whole story would take a while.
As it does.
And I would never listen to that long podcast about my whole story. No, I am adoptive foster mom. My husband and I live in Henrico. We have two boys. Our oldest is 14, and he came to us through a private infant adoption.
Okay.
And our youngest is 9 now. That's hard to say.
Yeah.
It's going by so fast.
Yeah.
Some days are so slow, but some years are fast.
Yes.
Bye.
And we fostered him through Henrico County.
Okay.
And his case turned to adoption. And professionally, I took an early retirement from the corporate world.
Okay.
So my background is in technology leadership.
Yeah.
I miss it and definitely, miss some of the paychecks that come with it.
I understand that.
Yeah, but you moved on to do good things, heart things.
Yeah,
So,
and I've done some work with nonprofits. Worked for Adoption Share for a couple of years and helping that, and gave me a lot of knowledge about just how the system works in the state of Virginia,
Right.
which was eye-opening and very fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then through our church and through other people in the adoption foster care community, just became part of foster care coalitions across the state.
Yeah.
I love doing a lot of volunteer work in the space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I say once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Yeah.
And
That's
I
so
just
true. And
feel-
you've
That is
seen the
so
ups
true.
and the downs
yeah,
of all of it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So it kind of had my, hands in volunteer places that I can do and that's available to do.
Yeah.
I've really enjoyed it.
I think that's great. And I mean,
Fantastic.
you've had such a history now of working with children and working with, churches and working with organizations. So you kind of have this big, full picture.
systems,
Yes.
Yeah.
Of the joys and the heartbreaks and the challenges, all of it of adoption. It's definitely a journey, but we like to hear the good stuff. Like, do you have a heartwarming moment in this world of adoption or foster care that you would share?
Oh, they're sprinkled throughout.
Yeah.
It's one of those worlds, as you and I have talked about before, too. If some days you wish you'd never seen it.
True.
Yeah.
Having that blind eye of what's going on in your backyard,
Yes.
what it feels like in your family to manage through some of this.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine not seeing it. I'll
true.
start crying talking about it. I'm not a crier normally.
Well, it's emotional. Yeah.
It is. But I think being part of someone else's story, even if it's just dropping off a meal, it's incredible.
Yeah.
It's just incredible. So I think, to me, some of the bright spots are what it's transformed me into. If I look at where I was 15 years ago, adopting our oldest son, and where I am now, I can't imagine not going through that transformation.
Yeah.
So to me, that's some of the heartwarming, beautiful parts. And as hard as fostering is and walking alongside that, even with social workers and what they deal with, it made me a better mom to our oldest son.
Yeah. And we know that adoption is so important because it offers permanency to a child. And as we've sort of alluded to, these are children who've likely had a background full of instability or change or maybe significant trauma. So when we think about permanency, what do you see in your work and even your personal stories as the short-term and even long-term benefits to this term permanency?
I tell you, that's a question that I almost want to go, duh.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay.
Hate to say it.
Yeah.
But it's even in a child that has no attachment issues in their background. Their mother that gave birth to them is raising them. They have aunts and uncles. They have grandparents in their family every day. When a relative dies,
Right.
It's a ripple through their life, and it's a loss.
Yes.
It's a big loss. And that's a kid that has secure attachment. They are hardwired to know that if I need something, someone's there.
Right.
You add in the background that hardwiring, which both my kids have,
Right.
of adults leave. So
Where adults aren't safe.
They're not
yeah,
safe.
they're not
Adults
safe.
don't
Adults-
respond.
They don't help.
There's
They're
so
not-
many things.
There are. Adults aren't going to get me what I need. And by need, it's basic needs.
Yeah.
I'm hungry. No one's going to feed me.
Yeah.
I have a dirty diaper. It's not going to be changed for 2 days. So that hard wiring.
Yeah.
So the permanency, just knowing no matter what your behaviors are, someone's there.
Yeah.
And so I can see with my own kids and with kids in the community that permanency makes such a difference.
Yeah. Without a doubt.
It just does.
Yep.
And it, if that hard wiring underneath is that people leave, it's hard to explain to others how long it takes to build that new neuron
Right.
of
And trust.
wow, I can trust. They really mean it when they say they're there for me and they love me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. I love how you explain that because it is kind of a duh moment of this makes total sense. And then we have zero time to talk about it today, but there's the science behind it about
Yes.
the brain science, and it's fascinating.
yeah. I could geek out on that.
I
for
know.
about 2
Yeah,
hours.
We
we all
both
love
could
it.
too.
I know.
Yes, it's just completely fascinating.
it.
And so for you and your family, clearly adoption was what provided permanency to your kids. And in other situations, it may be a kinship caregiver or some other scenario. But either way, as you got involved and you kind of made connections with DSS, which is Department of Social Services, you started to see kind of a need or a gap. Tell us about that and kind of how you stepped in to help.
Sure. And kind of as I mentioned before, the stepping in to help was a leader at our church leading up our foster care ministry saying, hey, Autumn, since you're a foster parent and you know Henrico DSS, would you like to be the one leading this area for
Yeah.
a ministry? And oh, by the way, there's 3 other churches that have foster care ministries that want to help too.
Right.
So that's how it started.
Yeah.
It was I can't take credit. There's so many, as you guys know, there are so many people in our community that do so much good.
Yes.
It is not one person.
No.
So it is not Autumn doing all of this.
Yes,
but,
but Autumn does a lot.
That's a big part of this.
so that's how it started. And then we did have the benefit of For Richmond and Virginia Kids Belong, and Janet Kelly, who started Virginia Kids Belong,
Yes.
was a
Yeah.
big part of coming in. There was a new leader in Henrico. The start was building that relationship and trust.
Yeah.
And that is how that started.
And it really sounds like you really address that need by helping to build that partnership, right, between the Department of Social Services and some of our local faith communities. And so in that, what needs were you able to address for the children and families that were needing some help?
I tell you, what's eye-opening is everything they have asked for, pretty much everything has been met.
Love that.
And that's over a 6-year time period. And so the relationship definitely developed over time.
Sure.
But the really cool so many cool things, but it still exists. And we meet with them monthly.
Okay.
So there are some key things that were lessons learned and things along the way.
Sure.
And when I mentioned Janet Kelly, she had the faith background, the faith. She is also a kinship parent, adoptive parent, and she's government.
Right.
So be able to talk that language and bridge that gap.
Always helpful.
And work with government to bring faith to the table. And then me as the coordinator, I've got a background running meetings.
Yes.
So
Yay,
some of that is
background.
my corporate experience and type A personality, frankly. So it was having the one representative from the church, one representative from government, but meeting with them monthly. And it started off slow. Hey, can we bring you donuts? Yeah. It took a little bit of time. So it was a lot of listening to what those needs are. Yeah. So some of those needs were pretty quickly of foster parents' night out. Which has turned into foster and kinship parents' night out.
Yes.
Because the kinship fostering has become really big in Henrico.
Sure.
They went from you guys know the numbers better than I do, but I believe they went from like a 5% to 33%.
Yes.
Yeah,
I think they're
big
closer to
jump.
40%.
Which is incredible.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely incredible. And those families need breaks.
yeah. And just
So
support.
it's like, hey, and what we would do on the faith side is talk to the churches. So churches want to help. They don't know how.
Don't know how.
They don't know how, and they don't know where to go. And in this space, it is a waiting in the wings concept.
Right.
So those needs started out as let's love on the social workers. So once a month we'd bring in treats. So I just want to go into every business and say, can you give social workers, because they don't know the front line that they're on.
It's
And meeting
not
with them
thought
monthly and hearing their stories and seeing their faces. What I found, what we saw over time, this meeting once a month with the faith community and Henrico, DSS Child Welfare, they all come to it every single time.
nice. Fantastic.
Because it's worth their time, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
it's-
and they
you've
know
kind of
we're
proven
going to
that-
listen. And then some of the other needs are more tangible, gift cards,
Yeah.
back to school supplies,
Yeah.
meals to maybe a foster family that just got a placement that's difficult. How do they get through that hump?
Yeah.
And with the increase in kinship, helping those families, which they are struggling to, the child got removed from their family.
Correct.
It's a family member. How do they,
Yeah.
is there
It's
no
so
visitation
complex.
with a mom and dad that they have a relationship with?
Right.
They're dealing with trauma too. And also parents getting their kids back out of foster care. So it has gone into that area too.
Yeah. Yeah.
A mom that's having visits with her kid, her SNAP benefits go away when her kids get taken away.
Right.
So how in the world is she supposed to entertain them
Yeah.
and feed them lunch? So the church has stepped into those spaces.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Fantastic.
could talk forever
I know.
about
But
all
no,
the
these
stories.
are
I'm sorry, but that's a
fantastic
short
examples.
Great
list of,
examples, and
Yeah.
it's a great example of until you know the need, you don't know how to respond.
Right.
And so understanding the need gives you the chance to then listen and figure out where you can plug in, which is exactly, you've been a connector.
Yeah.
And that's, it was needed, and it's so important.
Thank you so much for sharing some of those examples, because I think they're just fantastic, and they're in some ways they're very approachable and tangible. You know, I think for people to understand that we're not asking you to hang the moon, but it might be some collective work that we can do together. So, Autumn, as we wrap up, we always like to ask our guests to share their vision for children. So what motivates you every day, and I guess what are you working towards?
That's a good question. For the children to feel seen and heard
Yeah.
and valued,
Love that.
and every child. And maybe my little impact can't do it for the world, can't do it for the country, the state, or even the whole county, but maybe somewhere in my neighborhood.
It's a starfish story.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is. It really is. I hate to be so corny in the
But it is,
starfish
though.
story,
One
but
child
it's
at a
true.
time.
but it
Yeah.
is. And to impact, I don't know. I think of grandparents that have their kids with them, a mom that their kids in foster care, that they're working the plan, which, by the way, it is hard.
You better believe it.
Once your kid is officially in care, to get them out is such a huge feat.
Yeah.
And one of the things the faith community has been doing, one of the workers at DSS asked, can we celebrate these moms? So we put together gift bags.
Nice.
Yeah.
To know you've been seen. But I would love for just more people to see what's in Henrico County.
Yeah.
What is in your backyard.
Right.
And whether it's in your church, whether it's in your neighborhood, whether it's someone in your family, to trust that it is hard. And so how can you, I mean, I remember before this, sorry, I'm going on a segue here,
That's okay.
but I remember before this seeing a kid in our neighborhood cussing out loud. And my instant reaction was, oh, wow, that must be happening in his home.
Right.
His parents must cuss a lot.
Yeah.
I laugh at my old self. I
Yeah.
completely laugh.
Yeah.
But I know that's the majority of people out there.
Yeah.
They just don't know how the brain works in a child. And so my hope is that you love your neighbor
Yeah.
and you jump in to help. Don't be afraid to say, hey, can I take your kid somewhere?
Yeah. Can I help?
Yeah. Hey, I cooked dinner. Here's an extra lasagna. I mean,
Exactly.
whatever that is. Or if you pray, to me, sometimes it sounds another duh moment, but a simple way
Yeah.
to how can you just think about these families and the
Yeah.
kids. But my dream is that neighbors love neighbors. But how can you have grace for your neighbors and love them and make sure that every kid feels seen and loved and valued?
Love that.
Love that so much. And once you see these children, once you see the need, you want to act, right? It's just like this natural inclination for so many of us. So you just gave a few great ways, but if you could just leave everyone with like one call to action, one thing to walk away doing, Autumn, what would that be?
I think the biggest thing is don't be afraid to see the kids as kids.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid of the ugly. See beyond the behaviors.
Yes.
I think it makes a difference.
Yeah.
It makes a big difference. And wait in the wings for something you can say yes to.
Yeah. Oh, that's a perfect way to end. Wait in the wings for something to say yes to. I love that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank
Autumn,
you
thank
so
you
much.
Thank you
This
guys
was
for all you
lovely.
do.
Yeah, we
thank
appreciate it.
you. Thank you for listening to Vigilant Voices, Henrico Casa's podcast. We have a vision for all children to live in safe, healthy homes. You can help us make that happen. Tell a friend about our podcast and find us on social media.
I believe in the better days.